From the outside, the gray mansion looked like a palace out of a dream. Tall marble pillars, glittering glass windows, and a garden where roses bloomed in every color of the rainbow. It was the kind of home people slowed their cars to admire, whispering, "That's where the billionaire lives." But on the inside, the mansion was hollow. Behind the chandeliers and polished floors lived a silence that money couldn't cover. In one corner room sat a little girl in a wheelchair, gazing out the tall window. Her name was Emily Gray. She had been paralyzed since birth, her tiny legs too weak to carry her. Doctors from around the world had been flown in. Every therapy, every new machine tried. Yet nothing brought her back the one thing she had lost: her laughter. Her father, Richard Gray, was a man of immense power. He could buy companies, command markets, and influence politicians. But when he stood by his daughter's side, he felt utterly powerless. Every evening, he tried. He told her stories, brought her gifts, even hired clowns and musicians. But Emily's face remained the same, still, quiet, her eyes reflecting a sadness far too deep for a child. Sometimes she would glance at him as if asking silently, "Dad, why can't you make me happy?" That unspoken question broke him more than any business loss ever could. Richard had conquered the world. But he had failed where it mattered most, at home, with his only child. As the sun sank and the golden light filled the grand halls, the mansion seemed even emptier. The chandeliers sparkled, but there was no warmth in their glow. Richard often thought to himself, "I am the richest man alive, and yet perhaps, the poorest too. For I cannot buy my daughter's smile." Little did he know. Life was about to send someone into their world. A boy with nothing but his spirit, whose dance would unlock a miracle that money never could. The next morning, Richard Gray sat in the back of his sleek black limousine, staring blankly out the tinted windows. The city rushed past him, but his mind was still trapped in the silence of his daughter's room. He thought of her empty gaze, her lips pressed tightly together, her laughter long gone. The car slowed at a busy intersection. The traffic light flashed red, and a line of vehicles stretched across the street. Richard leaned back, lost in thought, until movement caught his eye. A boy. He couldn't have been more than 12. His clothes were ragged, his hair messy, and his shoes were nothing more than worn-out slippers. Yet instead of holding out his hands to beg, the boy stepped boldly into the middle of the road and began to dance. At first Richard frowned. But then he noticed something unusual. The boy wasn't just moving, he was alive in every step. His arms stretched wide. His feet tapped the cracked pavement with rhythm, his body spun with energy. His smile was radiant, unshaken by the stares of strangers. People in cars began to watch. Some rolled down their windows to drop a few coins into the boy's tin can. And every time the clink of money hit the bottom, the boy danced harder, faster spins, higher jumps, funnier expressions. Laughter and claps escaped from the crowd stuck in traffic. For a moment, people forgot the rush, forgot the stress. All except Richard, who sat frozen. He stared at the boy with an expression he hadn't worn in years, wonder. This child has nothing, he thought. No home, no wealth, no family, and yet, look at him. He carries light. Joy. The very thing my daughter has lost. The light turned green, cars began to roll forward, but Richard lifted his hand and spoke firmly to his driver. "Pull over." The chauffeur hesitated. "Sir. You mean for him?" "Yes," Richard said, his eyes still fixed on the boy. "For him, I need to meet that child." And as the limousine edged to the side, Richard Gray didn't yet realize he was about to make the most important decision of his life. A moment when a billionaire's world collided with a homeless boy's dance. Richard stepped out of his limousine. His polished shoes meeting the rough pavement. The city air carried the scent of gasoline and roasted chestnuts from a nearby vendor. Around him, people slowed their steps, whispering as they recognized the billionaire in the flesh. But Richard paid them no mind, his eyes were fixed on the boy. The young dancer froze mid-spin, his tin can rattling with a few coins. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. For a moment he looked frightened, as if expecting to be scolded for blocking traffic. Richard softened his expression. "What's your name, son?" he asked, his deep voice carrying both authority and kindness. The boy hesitated, clutching the tin can to his chest. "Michael," he replied softly. "Michael?" Richard repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "You dance well. Who taught you?" Michael shook his head. No one, sir. I just dance. It makes me forget I'm hungry sometimes. The words struck Richard harder than he expected. Hunger was something his daughter had never known, yet here was a child smiling through it, smiling brighter than Emily ever had. Richard glanced at his driver, who gave him a puzzled look. Billionaires weren't supposed to stop for street children. But Richard ignored the unspoken rule. He crouched slightly so his eyes met Michael's. Would you dance for someone else? Someone very special to me. Michael blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. For who? My daughter, Richard said. His voice trembled at the word. She hasn't smiled in a long time. The boy's eyes softened. He didn't ask for money. He didn't bargain. He simply nodded. If it makes her happy, I'll dance. For a moment, Richard felt something stir in his chest, hope, real hope. A feeling he hadn't tasted in years. Then come with me, he said. Michael glanced at the sleek limousine waiting at the curb, then back at Richard. He looked like a stray dog being offered entry into a palace. But when Richard extended his hand, Michael hesitated only a moment before taking it. And so, with a billionaire's hand holding a homeless boy's, two worlds began to walk toward a destiny neither could have imagined. The gray mansion gleamed under the afternoon sun, every corner spotless, every chandelier sparkling. But inside Emily's room, it wasn't the grandeur that mattered. It was the presence of someone new. Michael stepped cautiously, his bare feet whispering against the polished floor. Emily's wheelchair was positioned by the window, sunlight spilling across her face, highlighting her pale cheeks and wide, curious eyes. She watched him silently, unsure what to expect. Richard cleared his throat. Michael, would you dance for her? Michael swallowed hard, his hands trembling. I don't know if I can, he admitted, his voice barely audible. Richard smiled gently. Just try. Do it from your heart. Taking a deep breath, Michael began to move. The first steps were tentative, small, almost hesitant. But then, as if a switch had been flipped, he let go. He spun, kicked, and twirled with all the energy his young body could muster. Every movement carried emotion, joy, hope, courage. Emily's eyes widened. Something stirred inside her, a flicker of something long forgotten. Michael's movements were raw, imperfect, yet captivating. Each step seemed to reach out to her heart, tugging at something buried deep inside. And then it happened. A laugh, soft at first, then growing louder, freer, escaped Emily's lips. Richard felt his throat tighten. Tears threatened to spill. He watched his daughter's first genuine smile in years stretch across her face. The room, once silent and heavy, now shimmered with warmth. Michael paused, seeing the reaction he had unknowingly summoned. You smiled, he said softly, almost in disbelief. Emily nodded, her laughter still bubbling. Again, do it again. Richard stepped forward, placing a hand on Michael's shoulder. I think you've done more than dance, Michael. You've brought her happiness, something I thought was lost forever. Michael's own eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of something far deeper. Connection. He realized that despite everything he had lost in life, this moment, this chance to make someone truly happy, was priceless. It was then that Richard asked gently, almost hesitantly, tell me your story, Michael. How did you come to this? Michael lowered his gaze. I don't have a family. My mom, she passed when I was little. My dad, I never knew him. I danced to make people smile. It's the only way I can feel alive. Even if I'm alone, I can give joy. Richard's heart ached. He realized that this boy, with nothing but his spirit, had given his daughter a gift that all his wealth and efforts could never buy. Emily reached out to Michael, her tiny hand brushing his. You make me happy, she said, her voice trembling with delight. Richard smiled through his own tears. And I think it's time we changed both your lives. The days that followed were filled with laughter that had long been missing from the gray mansion. Michael's dances became a daily ritual for Emily. Sometimes playful, sometimes dramatic, always full of energy, his performances brought joy to every corner of the house. Emily's laughter echoed through the halls, light, bright, and unstoppable. The mansion, once silent and cold, now hummed with warmth. Richard watched in awe, marveling at how this boy, with no home or money, had unlocked a happiness he had spent years trying to purchase. One evening, Richard invited Michael to the terrace. The city lights twinkled below, but the glow inside Richard's heart shone even brighter. He looked at the boy, now a familiar presence in their lives. "Michael," he began, his voice steady but soft. "You've done more for my daughter than I ever could. And you've taught me something I needed to learn. True wealth isn't in money or possessions, it's in love, kindness, and bringing happiness to others." Michael's eyes widened. I just dance," he whispered, unsure what to say. "No," Richard corrected gently, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You do so much more. You've given her hope. You've given our family a chance at something real. I want you to stay with us. As part of our family." Tears welled in Michael's eyes. "Family?" he asked, his voice cracking. I've never had one." Richard nodded, smiling through his own emotion. "You do now. You'll have a home. An education, and a place where your heart belongs. And most importantly, you'll be Emily's brother." Emily reached out her hand from her wheelchair, her eyes shining with pure joy. "You're not just a brother, you're my best friend," she said. At that moment, the great mansion truly came alive. The walls that had once echoed with silence now resonated with laughter, hope, and love. A homeless boy had brought life back into a little girl who had forgotten how to smile. And in the process, he had taught a billionaire the priceless value of compassion. It was a new beginning. A family forged not by wealth or blood, but by heart, courage, and the simple act of kindness. And from that day on, their lives were forever changed.